Welcome to the Relationship Revivalist podcast. My name is John, and I am here with my beautiful wife, Jess. And guess what, Jess?
What, John?
We are on episode number 22.
That's awesome.
We are getting up there. We're close to 25, which is 1/4 of the way to 100.
Wow. You are so good with the mathing, John.
I'm just like splickety set. I can talk, but it's just a little twisted up right now.
We're pretty excited around here.
Yes, this is so true. So today we are going to talk about an interesting topic.
It's very interesting.
And perhaps we can save some marriages here just with this one podcast.
You know, I sure hope it helps somebody out there.
So that podcast title that we're talking about is "My Spouse Just Doesn't Fulfill My Needs."
Oh, how sad.
Isn't that?
Wow.
Oh.
Sorry. Yes, that is our topic. My spouse won't fulfill or doesn't fulfill my needs. And you know, a lot of people feel that way, especially if you're going through a rocky place in your marriage. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, make light of it like that too much, because that really is a feeling of a lot of people, especially when they're going through a hard time in their relationship. And they might even think, I've done all I can to try to get my spouse on board, but they just won't come along. What do I do? We get that a lot, don't we, John?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like trying to grab for nails, and each time you grab, it hurts. And so usually we hear, this is kind of the scenario that we hear is, well, my spouse is doing something on his or her own and not really caring about me, or, if you have kids, not caring about the kids and staying out late, the typical kind of stuff that happens, when your relationship is just kind of like the very doldrums of almost breaking up. You get these kind of stories, and they seem to repeat themselves. It's kind of interesting that when we're in this industry here and we see these things, we're like, wow, this is very much the same old, and all we have to do is show people how to get around that, and they're going to have amazing relationships. So,
Absolutely.
When we have a couple that's like, well, my spouse just doesn't cut it for me. I don't have any more love for them. I don't have an attraction for them. Or what is it you would say that we should do?
Well, if we're talking about just what you said, like I just not feeling that love anymore, and like they feel safe and everything, but they're just not having that loving feeling anymore. They're bored now, or they just don't have a good time together anymore. That instead of and a lot of people might say, well, it's not about you, it's about a team and all that. But you know what? We're turning that around a little bit, and we're saying it's all about you. Because you're having those thoughts and those feelings, and it's also about maturity in your relationship, too. And when I say it's all about you, what I mean is it's all about you to do the changing. And that might really hurt. It's like, oh, Jessica, you're asking way too much right now. But what I mean is we can't change our spouse. We can't even change ourselves. But what we can do is ask God to change us and ask Him, our coach, our guide, what can we do to make things better? Right?
Totally true. I was giving some counsel earlier today about this very thing, and I also put in a little bit of in this counseling. I said, you really just need to forgive too, and I think this is part of the puzzle too. If you forgive, because more than likely when you are saying things like, well, my spouse just doesn't cut it for me, I'm not attracted, you give these myriad of different excuses for why your relationship isn't working. And so if you are having these problems, these issues, perhaps there's some forgiveness that needs to happen in this relationship. Maybe you got hurt and then you stuffed it down into the deep wells of your
Emotions.
emotional storage. And when these things happen, they do fester. We're not built to be able to take this and store them. It's just not humanly possible. We are built for relationship and not for emotional baggage or stuff like that. So when things like this happen, you have to go and seek forgiveness. I believe fully in this. And it's...
And as we know, forgiveness isn't really even for the other person, it's for us. So it still is about us. Because when we forgive, we're asked to forgive so we don't wear that emotional storage. I like how you said that, John. We're not emotional storage units.
We aren't.
Right.
And there's a monthly price for that, too.
That costs a lot, and it costs a lot in our mental and emotional well-being, too. And, Jesus said to cast our cares on him, and that's part of that. And so, forgiveness can be really, really hard, especially if you are very emotionally attached to the situation. It's really hard to let that go. But God never asked us to forgive on our own. It's not like, oh, I have to forgive now. I'm gonna forgive now. Oh, it's not like that. Mm-hmm. We ask God to take that for us, to help us forgive. And he does it so well when we give it to him. Because we're not just forgetting about it. We're letting our healer, we're letting God himself take it over when we give it to him. And he helps us forgive.
And when we know that we've been forgiven or we are forgiving someone else, usually the feeling that you get right after that, right as that happens, is peace. And guess who peace is? It's Jesus. It means Jesus has literally taken that and covered it in his blood, and it's forgotten. It's no longer there. And that's why you get that peace feeling. You're like, oh, that feels so good.
And, we might never forget what happened or what the person did, but God has a way of taking that sting away, the pain away.
Yeah.
When we forgive, he heals that. And so it's just a dim memory. It's not at the forefront. It's not like, like if you walk barefoot outside, you might step on a sticker or something like that. It's not that kind of pain anymore. He heals that wound. And
so if you're in this state of mind of, well, my spouse just isn't cutting it for me, what is it that we can do for our spouse while we're in this frame of mind? I mean, this is something that it too will pass. Mm-hmm. And no one ever said that, a relationship is going to always grow. Just like, in the stock market, it's not going to continually grow. It's going to have some downfalls, and then it's going to leap and bound up again. And your love will grow. It just goes up and down a little bit, So you have to prepare for these things. And so, Jess, what would you say that we can do for our spouses while we're in this time period?
Well, after we earnestly ask God to help us change, and we ask him, please help me believe the correct way about my spouse. Help me see my spouse through your eyes, Lord. Mm-hmm. But also we need to start asking, what can I do for my spouse? What can I do for my spouse today that will make their life easier today? What can I do to help fulfill some of their needs or some of their desires?
That's really good. And as you were saying that, I would like to even add a little bit to that. When you were first dating your spouse, think about the feels that you had dating your spouse. And, get somewhere private or, somewhere quiet and just meditate on the feelings that you got when you were dating your wife or your wife to be or your husband to be, and really just own those feelings. Let them sink into you, and then go out and be loving like you just met your spouse.
That's so good. And as you're feeling those feels, don't just put a lid on them right away and say, oh, but they're different now.
Right.
They did this now. Let those feelings come up and enjoy them.
Yeah, because when you say but, that's hurt speaking out over the love. And Love is going to do things that are loving and thoughtful, and they're going to make your spouse go, whoa, what happened? You were treating me so differently yesterday or this morning or what have you, and now you're doing this for me? What did I do to deserve this? And you do these things continually for your spouse, and you're going to start changing their thoughts, and they're going to love you even more. And that's the whole idea, right? We got into marriage to learn how to be a partner and to learn relationship and to learn how to be loving and just to be loving. I think that is the hugest thing right there.
Mm-hmm. And also, as you're doing this process, don't expect it to happen overnight. Because more often than not, it's not going to happen overnight. So if you do it with the expectation, well, by tomorrow morning, they're going to have turned totally around and be completely loving to me, or else.
That's manipulation. That's
absolutely manipulation. That's wrong. Don't do that. Right. So do it with the mindset of, just like we've talked about before, if a barge is going the wrong way, it has to turn around. It's not gonna turn like a speedboat. It's gonna take a period of time to turn and change. And so when you're changing the direction of your marriage and of your own thinking toward your spouse and your own feelings toward your spouse, don't expect those emotions and those thoughts and feelings to just change overnight. Yeah. Especially where your spouse is concerned, because they don't know what's going on inside of you either. And so do it with patience and do it with kindness and compassion.
And, like you said, you don't have a speedboat, but, there's also different sizes of boats. And therefore, there are different sizes of barges that we all have in our marriage. So if you have ultra long Guinness Book World Records barge length, it's going to take some real maneuvering to just... In some rivers aren't even as wide as that barge, so you're going to have to learn how to segment your barge and put it back together. I mean, it can be that way. And if you're not so deep into the relationship and you can just apply some of these principles, you may be able to turn your marriage around in a month's time, but those that have the really long barges.
And maybe they've accumulated a bunch of hurts over the years, and so it feels like a huge barge that they're trying to turn around.
And sometimes you can't just disassemble the barge. You have to take it out to the ocean and then turn around and then bring it back down where it's actually manageable. So, we're talking in just parable type things, but you get the point that you've got to do some work on your relationship. This relationship thing is not just a hayride or a walk in the park. I
love all the analogies we're using today.
You have to put some work into it, and if you don't, then you shouldn't expect dreamy stuff. Put the work in there, and then you can have...
And take the time.
You can have whatever you want as long as you put the work into it. We are going to go ahead and cut this one and send you guys off on the next week full of happenings. We love that you guys are listening, and I think there's one thing that Jess wants to talk to you about.
We just want to say that we're so thankful for our audience that's listening, and we just really hope that this podcast has helped somebody today.
So we're going to ask you guys to go ahead and go over to our website, download our ebook. It's an amazing ebook, 14 pages of amazing strategies. There's 7 secrets in there that I think you're going to want to know what they are. And download those. We will see you in the next podcast next week on Wednesday. And have an awesome and an amazing, blessed day.
See you later.